Hi there, I'm Dennis Velco. Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of OutBüro Voices, where we have engaging conversations with LGBTQ professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders from around the world. We are talking with Martin Cowart. He is a spiritual and mindset coach. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben. It's great to be here, and it's wonderful to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, absolutely. You have an interesting angle that I've not yet had. I've had several different people who help other people, whether they call themselves life coach, business coach, relationship coaches, and so forth. You seem to touch on some of the areas of one of them, but I thought it was a very interesting angle. So I would love for you to give us a little bit of information about your background very briefly, and then kind of getting into the spark of what made you transition into what you're doing today. And then, of course, we'll move on into actually a deep dive into what you are doing.
I love that question, and I always think it's a great way to start with how did you get where I am today? How did I become a spiritual teacher and a prosperity mindset coach working with gay, bi, and transgender business leaders? Well, I'll go back. I won't go back to my childhood. That's a little bit, but I will go back to the aha moment, the pivotal time in my life, and that was back in 2016. And in 2016, I was a wealth manager with a big Fortune 100 financial services firm with a fancy office overlooking Park Avenue. I was a very successful wealth manager with a big firm, and we elected Trump as president, and it all came tumbling down. Because you see, for me, as a gay man, a gay boy growing up in Southwest Georgia, Trump represented all those bullies who bullied me when I was a little boy. And then when that happened, also, I realized that I was surrounded with a lot of people who liked Trump in my office. So I found myself in a very toxic and uncomfortable environment. And in very short time, I went from being a top producer to really almost at the edge of bankruptcy, literally at the edge of bankruptcy. I had people telling me, Martin, you could declare bankruptcy. Yeah, but instead of declaring bankruptcy, I remember to this day, this is a very important part of my story. You want to know how I got here. I was having a pity party one day, a really good pity party. And if you know what that is, it's a real narcissistic way of feeling sorry for yourself. And I was all curled up on the sofa thinking they were going to repossess my car and my house and all this kind of nonsense. And so my spiritual teacher and my coach called me on the phone, and she said, to talk to me, see how I was doing. And I told to her for a little bit. And she said, I hear you, but I don't want you to declare bankruptcy. Instead, I want you to go inside and I want you to surrender this to God. And I knew exactly what she was talking about because I've been a contemplative for 40 years. And I knew, and I had surrendered other things, alcohol over my life, but I had never really surrendered my obsession with money. And that's what this was. I had held on to my control. I had controlled my money because Martin was going to do a better job. And what I found was I had gotten myself a big, huge financial mess. And it wasn't pretty. And I was miserable and I was scared. So I did what she said. I got on my hands and knees and I said to God, I am so sorry. I have created this I took responsibility. First thing, if you got a problem, you got to take responsibility for it. That's the first lesson to solve any problem. You got a problem, you created it. That's the end of the story. There is no problem that you have that you did not create. We did not create ourselves. So I got on my hands and said, I created this giant problem. I am scared. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix it. God, please help me. I surrender it to you. And I'm going to tell you something. This may sound a little cheesy, Dennis, but I've gotten to know that intimate part of myself pretty well over the years. But as soon as I did that, almost instantly, this is quite crazy. All of a sudden, this blanket of love and grace and power descended over me in a way and calm that I had never experienced in my life. And a voice came up inside of me and said, Martin, none of this stuff matters. None of this stuff matters. It doesn't matter if you're successful. It doesn't matter if you make a lot of money. It doesn't matter if you get certified with the Mankind Project. All these things that you're so stressed over and you're so worried about and you're so obsessed with, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is that you show up in the moment with love and gratitude, and I will do the rest. Now, I'm a contemplative and I'm a mystic. I is that divine spirit. Her name is Joy the Wise Woman. Now, in my podcast, it's called Speaking the Truth About Money with Martin Cowart and Joy the Wise Woman. But it took me a little while to get here. I wish I could say that right after that moment of the burning bush, that all of a sudden I just went skipping off in the universe with the divine. It didn't happen that way. I had a little bit more darkness to go through. But in reality, what happens, it began to create a new North Star for me. And that North Star is to eradicate what I call the scarcity mindset from the planet, because I think that is the root cause of all pain and suffering. Not all pain, because we have a certain amount of necessary pain and suffering, but the unnecessary pain and suffering. Financial problems are all rooted in this belief that there is not enough resources to go around, including money, and we have to climb our way to the top to get our fair share. And it's just not true. So as I began to realize that we are of abundance and we come from abundance, I began to coach and teach others how to get out of that emotional attachment to money. Now, as a wealth manager, this is important. As a wealth manager, people always wanted financial freedom. That's every client I ever met wanted financial freedom. And I don't care how much money they had. I could show them the best plans, the best ways to work it out, and they would have more money to spend in 10 lifetimes. But if they came from a place of scarcity and lack in their mind, it was never going to be enough. So I began to realize what people really wanted was freedom from their emotional attachments to money. And that's why I became a spiritual teacher and a prosperity and mindset coach. And I decided to do it largely with my tribe, because I think we suffer the most, because unlike everyone else, everybody has an issue with identifying their worth with their pocketbook. But for gay men, we have a deeper issue, a deeper wound, if you will, around unworthiness that comes from our sexual orientation. We learned as a small boy that we were somehow flawed, somehow lagging in the way we expressed ourselves, our creative sexual energy. We didn't call it that when we were 4 or 5 years, but we knew there was something different about us.
Yeah.
So what I've done is I have learned that's what we need to embrace. That's what we need to hold and to love and accept about ourselves. Because the more we love and we accept it's really a practice of self-love. That is the path. That is the door to financial success, is self-love. And that's what I did in that moment. I loved myself. I got in touch with that divine part of Martin, I call Joy the Wise Woman, and I fell in love with Martin. And that's what I coach, and that's what I teach. And I have a couple of programs where I do one-on-one and group coaching to help people really. I don't go out and market it as a course in self-love, because people wouldn't really understand it. But truly, the path to abundance and success and a life of love, joy, and abundance is always through the door of self-love.
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. That has come up in several of the shows. And it's a personal belief of mine. And it is a journey, for a lot of people getting over things. And even if they don't necessarily correlate the two, cause and effect of two different things, you get imprinted a lot when you're younger, and then you hear that negative information. And there's, again, study after study shows, the LGBT community, typically, and African-American and Latino and even women, overcompensate, overwork, will work, 2 to 3 hours extra a day, or 5, or whatever it takes to succeed, because they need or lack that internal feeling of acceptance. And so, because they didn't get it from their parents and so forth. And matter of fact, I'm editing right now an interview with kids being rejected from their parents and being thrown out of their homes, and that will affect them until they learn to overcome that external rejection and then get into themselves and love themselves first. And as I've said a lot, I quote RuPaul, honey, if you can't love yourself, who the hell is gonna, right?
That's right, baby.
And so
it really is. I mean, every conflict that we have that we think is out there is actually a conflict in here. There are no conflicts. There are no problems except the ones we create inside of ourselves. So but the beauty of that is, what I said before, we have no problems. We have no financial problems unless we create them. We have no problems, period, unless we create them. But the beauty of that is when we fully accept responsibility for our problems, that puts us into the control to solve them. We can't solve somebody else's problem. We can only solve our own. But the first step to solving any problem is fully accepting our role in the responsibility of creating the problem. And then we can begin to resolve the inner conflict, because it's an inner conflict. The thing that happened out there we think is the cause of the problem is never the problem. That is a symptom of the problem inside of ourselves.
Yes. And I've talked in a couple of shows about, and this is all Googleable, honey, I'm not making crap up here, right? So it's being able to set boundaries, because although you have your conflicts here, you're allowing potentially other people to continue to perpetuate that negative messaging and
of course,
negative stuff.
Like I said, I was in a toxic environment of people who they wanted me. The company wanted me because I was so well infused, if you will. I was so much a big part of the gay community. They wanted my dollars.
Right.
But I remember one time I sent a picture of me at a gay business expo to one of my bosses, and here we are at this business expo, and he said he got offended. Why are you sending me these offensive pictures? So I mean, he's like, I want you here because I love gay people. I want their money, but I don't want to know anything about you. I don't really care about your personal life. Don't show me this stuff. But you got to set some boundaries, and that's what I mean. You've got to realize, I completely agree. There are people who will infringe on you, and you don't want to surround yourself. You don't want people in your orbit who are not, who don't love you. You can't. It makes resolving the inner conflict more difficult when you've got outer conflict adding to the wound. So what you want to do is, like you say, is you want to set some boundaries. Say, you know what, you're not the kind of person that I want. I can choose who I'm going to hang out with and who I'm going to be with and who I want to spend my time with and who I want to support, love and support. And don't take it personally. I just don't find you in my orbit as someone who's helping me live a life of love, joy, and prosperity.
Right. And
thank you. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. And in some of our dialogues in the past is, I grew up with a very right-wing father who I had to finally put those boundaries up to the point where we now haven't spoken in 2.5 years, because I can't even say the word community without him starting to quote Bible scripture.
Well, I understand.
And it's those kind of people who continually, perpetuate when you set boundaries. Sometimes even if they're family members, you have to go all the way to even maybe completely distancing yourself, but hopefully not.
Yeah,
but you need to set boundaries so that you have time and energy to heal, to work on yourself and love yourself first and foremost.
Yeah, and the way I would think about setting that boundary is realize this, Dennis. He is actually blaming you for his unhappiness, and you're not willing to take on that blame. That's the boundary you're setting. You're not responsible for your father's happiness. He wants to blame his unhappiness in his life is because you're a gay man.
Yeah,
and so you're very right to say, you know what? I'm not taking on that responsibility. You want to be unhappy, that's your choice. And you want to blame it on me, that's your choice. I am not going to accept that. I'm not going to step into that place because I'm not responsible for your happiness. That's your stuff. You got to do your internal work in order for you to be happy. I can't do that for you. So that's that. So I completely agree, and so many gay people have to do that. But the thing about it is until you've done that inner work, which is what I coach about, you don't realize you think if they don't like you, the person, we make it about ourselves. That's that narcissistic protection and we need that protection, but we need to set a boundaries and set the boundary and then let it go. Okay, I know I can't do that. I need to let it go, and I'm going to go about my life. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to live a life of love, joy, and prosperity. I don't care what you do.
Absolutely, because the only person you can control is yourself. You can't control others.
Yeah, and the only thing you control in yourself is actually your mind. The only thing you can do is change it. There's nothing. We don't control anything in the world. We don't even. We're not even the ones doing the doing. It's the divine spark within us that's actually having this conversation and listening to us today. We just have to get the human being out of the way and let the divine presence come alive.
Very cool. So, so talk to me a little bit about, how you either your ideal clients who would be seeking you out, just for clarity, and then maybe talk to us a little bit about, how you work with your clients. What are the kind of things you go through? Is there fairly some standard
That's a
things,
great
or is
question. Yeah.
each unique?
I will tell you who my ideal client. My ideal client is me when I was living in that office, miserable, living with imposter syndrome. And while I was making some pretty good money, I wasn't making nearly the amount of money that I should be making based on what I know and my wisdom and my knowledge. So what I work with are people, are gay men who have all the credentials in the world, the best resume, this is typically what I work with. I'll get another segment in a minute, but we've got everything in the world. We've got every credential. We've worked so hard to prove our worth, but we're still not making that kind of money that we're really worthy of. And because we don't still feel, I don't care what you say, it's every single time it's a matter, people are having financial problems. It is an issue of unworthiness. So what I do is I coach people through a process, a 12-month process, to self-love, to know they are worthy. They are worthy of making a 7-figure business. They are abundant. They have everything they need within themselves to create that life of love, joy, and prosperity. It's not about how much you do. It's about who you're being in the moment. You're being that powerful, creative, gay man that loves and wants to serve and make the world better for others. And when we step into that power, then we begin, the world becomes limitless. The amount of resources we have become limitless. So for me, it's that highly driven, successful gay business leader who's got a gap, or maybe they've reached that, maybe they had a $250,000 annual range that they thought was what but they've been stuck there for 3 years and they're like bored. And they don't know how to get beyond it because they think that's what their minds, that's what they're worthy of. But they're really, they're unhappy. They're not really where they think. They're yearning for something bigger. So I might help. Okay, what is your desire? Not your goal. What is your desire? Is your desire to be a 7-figure business, to be a 7-figure business owner, and have $1 million business? What's in your way? And we move those blocks out of your way. That's my typical client. But I also work with some CEOs where money is not so much the issue, but it's that thing you talked about earlier, where they have gotten to the C-suite of a big corporation and they're doing very well financially, but they have completely given up their personal life to get there, because they thought they had to sacrifice their life in order to get to that C-suite executive place. And so what I teach them is to say, don't be the CEO of your corporation. You become the chief executive officer of your life and learn to love yourself, put yourself, and you will excel. You'll even move further. You'll be more productive in your C-suite role if you're more in love with yourself and you're not making a sacrifice, because then you're going to be happy, and we're going to always lead and serve, and we're coming from a place of joy and happiness. That's all there is to it. So that's basically the kind of people I work with and what I do and how I help them. And to answer your other question, I have 2 programs. I have they're both 12-month programs. I have a group program that's 12 months that's called the LGBTQ Hero's Journey to Financial Heart Space. Financial Heart Space stands for, actually, I'm a spiritual teacher and I use the wisdom teachings of Jesus. People often don't even know what the wisdom teachings of Jesus are, because we've been so skewed by a bunch of nonsense about Jesus. But the reality is that we live in abundance. And so I help people by getting into the truth of who they are. And I use those spiritual principles to help people love them. His only commandment was to love your God with all yourself and love your neighbor as yourself. That is the only thing. So I teach that. That's what I teach. And I teach it and the hero's journey is the journey from the beliefs in our head to the love in our heart. So my 12-month program and my one-on-one coaching program are both built on that chassis, if you will, that hero's journey chassis from our heads to our hearts.
All right. Very cool and interesting, and a perspective with a twist based on, different things that I've talked with other people about.
I developed a practice during the pandemic. I've been doing shadow work for over 20 years in an organization called the Mankind Project. So I'm a very skilled master at shadow work facilitation. Shadow work are those dark parts of ourselves that we don't love, we hide, we press, and deny. But the journey of self-love is to learn to love the parts of ourselves we don't like, the parts of ourselves that we can see in people like Trump, that we can manipulate, that we can lie, and we can do all those kinds of things. So I've been doing, this is how I develop my technique, or my process, if you will, and it's called the path of the heart. And it goes to get to financial heart space, because financial heart space is to me the kingdom of heaven. When Jesus was talking about the kingdom of heaven, and you can tell your right-wing father this, he wasn't talking about a place we go when we're good little boys and girls. He was talking about the here and now. He was talking about, like Buddha, he was talking about a higher level of consciousness. He was talking about that place of peace and love and joy within all of us. And so that is self-love. And that's what he taught, was a path to the kingdom of heaven, which is at hand. So financial heart space to me, and the biggest obstacle to getting into the kingdom of heaven, to getting into the financial heart space, is money. So if I can take money and we can move that as an obstacle, which has been in most of our lives an instrument of reward and punishment, and we can begin to love ourselves, and we can begin to see money as an infinite creative resource we all have access to, then it becomes an expression of love to create more for the world. The best example of that is Oprah Winfrey. She and I are both the same age. Both of us were born in 1954 in the rural South. She in Mississippi, me in Georgia. I came from a fairly affluent white family. And I was a white boy in a pretty affluent South Georgia family. She, on the other hand, was a poor black girl in Mississippi. Her chances and mine were totally different, but look at what she's done. She has become the wealthiest woman in the world. She was just announced as $2.7 billion. Why? Because she tapped into, at a very young age, this infinite power of creation within herself. And she's created the $2.7 billion. She's created that full. How does she do it? By serving the planet, by serving and making the world better for others. And that is the movement. I call it the post-pandemic abundance economy. We have moved. Before the pandemic, we were in what I would call the scarcity economy where there wasn't enough. It was male dominated. It was claw your way to the top for me. Since the pandemic, we've moved in what's called we've moved into the age of Aquarius, the age of women, the we world. We're living in the we economy. We are doing things for the care of others. It is not about me. It is about we. We are all part of this journey. And so what I'm teaching people is how to be part of that we. Financial heart space is a we place. We're all in that. We're all living in that quantum field, if you say. Some people call it quantum field. People call it manifestation. People call it creation. And I'm just one of thousands, if not millions of people who are already living in this world of prosperity. And my job is to continue to spread the message and change the way we think about money to the truth, so that the whole world begins to live in this world of love, joy, and prosperity.
I absolutely understand. And, when you were chatting too, for those in the audience if you've not heard of the lost books, of the Bible, the agnostic tales, is it not called that? Please correct me if I'm wrong.
That's good enough.
Okay. Well, I just posted one in the, when you join OutBüro.com, there's over 240 groups, and one of them is Laws of Attraction. And I watch a lot of different videos as I, doing processing or waiting for the YouTube uploads and so forth. And there's a couple of people in that field that I like to watch. A couple of them are quite hot, so I do watch them. But one I just posted the other day, he was talking, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head, that it was one of the lost books and of course, I think it was the Thomas, and he was talking about, and the whole thing was Jesus talking about basically the laws of attraction and living in prosperity and so forth. So folks, if you'd like to hear how this kind of ties together, because again, if you don't know this, where the hell have you been? But go look it up. Most of the, all of the Bible was handpicked and chosen, right? So these Dead Sea Scrolls, those were the ones that didn't quite make it in, but they stuffed them in jars and put them in a cave, hoping no one would ever find them in their modern day. But when you look at those texts, you see such a wider view, such a broader concept. It wasn't about controlling, like ended up in a lot of the Bible scripture of today. It was more open and expansive and much more like you would think of a Buddhist or a Hindu kind of a way of thinking.
Absolutely. Jesus was the teacher of what we call non-duality. That's what you're talking about, not a oneness. And if you, that's something your listeners should know about. There's inside all those found, it was like intentionally took all the feminine, the divine feminine and pulled them out of the Bible and put them in those jars. Mm-hmm. So what we got was a very masculine, male dominated, controlling religion that actually separated us from the divine. Once they pulled the divine feminine, they made Mary Magdalene into a prostitute and they made Jesus into a celibate. Neither were true. I'm sure they had sex. As a matter of fact, if your readers want to go find a really fun lost go find the secret gospel of Mark. I'm not going to tell you what's in it, but let's just say he goes and finds a young man and they go off and spend 7 days learning the kingdom of heaven. Mm-hmm. That's a little teaser. It's called the secret gospel of Mark, and it's only one page. But it does open up the idea, because Jesus, one of my teachers said in spiritual world, it would be ridiculous to think that God would come as human and create something as wonderful and as exciting and as sacred as sex and not enjoy it. That is absurd. That is absurd. But the Roman Catholic Church in the early days, in order to gain control, because our sexual energy is so powerful, decided to say, okay, we're going to strip Jesus of his humanity and make him a divine celibate thing that's not real. Mm-hmm. And we're going to turn Mary Magdalene into a prostitute. Neither one of those are true, by the way. Yeah. They probably, but the thing about Jesus, and historically, from what I understand, is he probably did not objectify women. Right. He enjoyed, they were the subject of sexual energy exchange. So what we would rightfully do is to learn how to use the relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene as an example of free expression of sexual energy to create. That would be a better way of looking at the human divine parts of Jesus and ourselves, because what Jesus was always teaching us, he wasn't anything different than you and me. He wasn't saying, he was one of the few, like Buddha, who lived and sustained an energy of unconditional love for a long time, and is still permeating the world. But the reality is, what he kept trying to say is, every human being, man, woman, child, we're all have the same love, creative, sexual energy within ourselves, and love that.
And get over all the blockage that you've been learned to feel negativity, shame, and so forth, so that you can embrace it all.
Because you can't, and that's the journey, and that's what I teach. Those are the shadow beliefs we learned really to protect ourselves. So so it's not like those are bad things. We needed them, but we did. How we get over them, or we reframe them. And to answer your question about how I help people, we might go back and look at your money story. Where did you get this story about money? Like for me, I heard my parents arguing about money. So I had this deep belief inside of me that in order for me to be loved, I need to make a lot of money. Where did I get that story? I got it from listening to my parents argue. And when I go back and pull that story apart and reframe it, I hear it totally different as a mother who loved her child, who loved her son, who was scared she wasn't going to be able to take care of him in a good way, all her own demons coming to life. And then I began to say, well, we're just human. And I made up a story and it wasn't true. My mother loved me whether I made money or not. But I made up this story that I wasn't lovable unless I made money. And a lot of people, a lot of us in this country, gay or straight, but I think for gay men and women, it's a bigger issue for us because we're all, like you said before, we're trying to prove our worth. We're trying to prove we're worthy of love by overcompensating and doing more effort, more hours, more time than our straight counterparts.
Absolutely. And when you do even look at the straight counterparts, what's, outside of maybe infidelity, one of the, number one or number two reasons for divorce is money, right? And it's complex. And yes, everyone needs money in order to, exchange for other goods or services, get your lights, electricity bills and so forth paid. But it's about learning to be also happy with where you are today, right now, being grateful for whatever you have and being open to ideas and so forth on how to grow. I mean, there are statistics that I'd love the audience to know about. It's written about on OutBüro.com, and that is gay and bisexual men are typically, based on the studies in the US and Canada, the US and the UK, are paid about 23% less than their heterosexual counterparts. Now, why is that? It's the same thing as the gender inequity. And that is, if you have a heterosexual hiring manager, they're going to view you as, effeminate, probably don't have kids, and therefore going to offer you less. But what you need to do is not only know that you have the same skills and so forth that the other person that they're looking at has, but you have the confidence to negotiate, the self-love to negotiate a higher rate, knowing that that is literally institutional level studies.
That's exactly right. It's shifting your mindset to a place, and that's what self-love does. It gives you the confidence to be able to go out and say, I'm going to charge what I'm worth because that's what I'm worth. And you be having the confidence inside yourself to say, this is what I'm worth, and this is what I charge, and this is what this is all about. And I don't have to work any harder or any more than anybody. Matter of fact, I'm making more money, having more fun, and working less hours. And although I work a lot because I enjoy what I do so much, and I have to get away from it. But the reality is that I have since I have developed this abundance way of living and this abundance mindset, I personally now live in a world. Somebody asked me, how was I doing? I said, I'm having another day of love, joy, and prosperity. I live in the kingdom of heaven. And because I move those financial barriers and belief systems out of the way with the help of my spiritual teachers and coaches. And that's what I do. And I help because the thing is, we cannot do it alone. That's also the principle, the story of Jesus. It's like, why did he send disciples out in pairs of two? I'll share a little story, but I was an early responder at 9/11. I ran the food operation at St. Paul's Chapel at Ground Zero. And I was called into that chaos about 3 days after 9/11 to help rescue their food operation because the health department had shut it down. And we discovered something we would laugh about. If we sent somebody out by themselves to go do the simplest task, often they didn't come back and the task didn't get done. But if we sent people out in pairs of two, at least, they usually came back quicker, faster, and always got it done. So we would make this joke about we now have a better appreciation for why Jesus always sent his disciples out in pairs of two. And that's why in this new economy, in this new abundance economy, spend your money on coaches. I'm new as a coach. Half of my revenue right now, I spend on getting coached. Half of it. Because I'm always getting a return on my investment because I'm investing in me. I just recently invested in a coach to help me with LinkedIn, to understand how to work LinkedIn, how to go out and get better. I have more than gotten my return on my investment from investing in that coach. So if for your listener, if you don't have a coach, if you're a business and you're struggling, go out and hire a coach that you resonate with that's going to help you get from point A to point B, because we can't get there by ourselves. We cannot. Even coaches, need coaches. Doctors need doctors. That is the mindset of an abundance economy. We need the love and support of each other in order to get our desires met. And if your desire is to run $1 million business, you're going to have to get some help from other people and invest in that business in order to be able to do it.
Absolutely.
When you look at like Oprah Winfrey, go back to her 2.7 billion. She didn't have like $2.7 billion sitting in a bank account. She's got assets of people working and creating an entire economy bigger than some countries. That's where that money is. It's money flowing in under her corporate umbrella that's making the world better. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about some selfish need to be powerful. We're talking about an opportunity to expand and grow and create economies of scale and joy and prosperity for everybody. And that's just a whole different way of living. And that's what I call the post-pandemic abundance economy that we're all moving into. And we're building social structures and economic systems for the benefit of everyone. Just look at the things that were passed in the last couple of months this month, on infrastructure. And the amount of money our government is finally putting into place for the benefit of the people they govern. For the first time in history, we actually have a government that actually cares about the people they govern. They lead with what I call the 4 pillars of good leadership: trust and transparency, empathy, compassion, and of course, competency. And they are doing it in spades, and they are doing a beautiful job. And I wanted to say one thing. We just have celebrated one of the most, for me, the most exciting Pride months in history. I'm 67. I'll be 67 next month. So I was part of the whole AIDS pandemic. I mean, I was there. I was a part of it. I was in my 20s and 30s, and my friends were dying, and that was bad enough. That was a dark enough cloud. But the real dark cloud that finally got lifted when we elected these new people into power in this country. The dark cloud was we realized we lived in a country where our government just didn't care about us because we were gay or we were drug addicts. We were in the margins, and they were like, we don't care about you. We're not going to talk about that. So we got out. I was part of it. We got out and we marched in the streets. We marched in Washington. We acted up. But that was the dark cloud that rolled in back in the 80s. And today, this year, that cloud rolled away, and I felt free. That dark feeling of that I'm not cared for, that they only care about themselves, that went away from me. And I think for a lot of us, particularly in the gay community, because we lived through that crisis. That was painful. But the painful part was to live in a country where the government we thought cared about us, where we learned they don't care about you because you're gay.
Absolutely. And that still unfortunately happens in so many countries. And it's to an extent is still happening here with laws. Oh,
we're not completely through. I mean, we've still got the old male dominant. They're scared.
Oh yeah.
White men are freaking scared right now because what they used to think gave them power doesn't give them power. They thought money gave them power. And we've learned that money alone has no power other than the power we give it. Mm-hmm. And we've taken that away. We've taken that false illusion that money has power away from them, and they don't know what to do.
I hear you. Well, I know we're going to be coming up here on our time. Is there any, we've chatted about quite a bit. I think you've given a great overview about your concept and your services. Of course, we'll have links below on all the different platforms to your websites and different accounts. Is there anything prior to us signing off today that maybe we didn't discuss?
Well, I would like to invite our tribe, the gay, bi, trans, male tribe. I have two Facebook groups. I have one is called the the Financial Mystic Sanctuary. And that's for everybody. And you can come there and join, and you're going to learn a lot about my spiritual teachings and what I do. And I do a lot of stuff in that. And that's for every single person. But the shadow work I do and the interior work that I do, I keep that to our tribe. So because it's what I know. I don't know the interior landscape of women at all, because I've never done that work. But I've done 20 years of work with interior landscape with men, and I'm a gay man. So I've created a Facebook group called Financial Heart Space for Gay, Transgender, and Bisexual Men. It is a virtual an online sanctuary for gay, bi, transgender men, business leaders to love and support each other into this new abundance economy. So my invitation is for all of you, if you're not part of that community, join me in the Financial Mystic Sanctuary. If you are part of this, even whether you're a business leader or not, if you're a gay, bi, or transgender man and you're a leader, whether you call yourself that or not, come over and join us in that Facebook group for some love and support, and give your some love and support and receive some love and support in that group. And we're going to be doing something really exciting coming up in next week. I'm going to be co-facilitating a 21-day challenge inside of there to help men in our community better promote themselves by going live on social media. That is, if you want to hold your business, we're doing it right now. If you want to be unique, if you want to stand out of the crowd, people have got to know you and they've got to know your story to want to hire you and bring you into their world, because they got to get to know you and trust you. And the best way to do that is to go live on social media platforms and tell your story. So we're going to be doing a 21-day challenge to help men in our community get comfortable telling their story, get that confidence. And we're going to coach you for 21 days in how to go out there and be a powerful, creative, gay man, business leader out in the internet, because that's the way the future's going. You know that as well as I do. We've got to be able to get out and share our story of truth so we can bring our services to the world. And we're going to be doing a 21-day challenge starting next Wednesday, and it's free. And I encourage everyone, including you, Dennis, to come and join us.
All righty. Well, if you would also not only the links, but shoot me a little write-up on that, and I'll add that to the OutBüro blog and promote it.
I will do that. I will put that out there because it's going to be a really exciting 21 days of growth and expansion and confidence building. That's awesome. What it is, confidence building.
Awesome. And of course, you are, just like everyone, is welcome to create groups on OutBüro.com. There is open groups, which is open for everyone, private groups where you need to actually approve the people to join, and only content is seen by the people there. And then there are secret groups. So you could actually have a group where only the people you invite participate. And with that too, folks, if you come over to OutBüro.com, complete at least 30% of your profile to unlock all the features, including joining groups. Also, then you'll be able to connect with Martin right here and other people on the site. And again, join groups. There's Out Business Owners Group, which is the largest, Out Leaders Group, which is the second. There's Transaction group specifically for women, 1 or 2 groups currently specifically for men. And of course, we'd love to have Martin and so forth, and all of you create a group on the site regarding your business, what you're doing, your industry, your location. There's about 240 groups on OutBüro.com as we speak. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Martin. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, I have enjoyed it too, and I want to just thank you so much, Dennis, for what you do for our community. You sacrificed a lot to support our community, and I want you to know how much I appreciate it personally, and the community appreciates what you're doing. And because it definitely comes from a place of love and compassion for yourself and the world we live in today.
It's passion, passion with a mission.
That's the way it works, to keep it going.
I appreciate your comments. And thank you, everyone, for staying tuned to this episode. You've been listening to Martin Cowart. And again, I'll plug it once more. We'd love to have you on OutBüro.com. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.